everyone. This is Alekhya, Assistant Professor in Cybersecurity Department. And today our topic is on active and passive attacks in cybersecurity and what are the differences among them. So today our topics are active attacks and passive attacks. So what is the importance among them and what is the main difference between the active attacks and passive attacks? So first of all, it is very important to distinguish between what is an active attack and what is a passive attack. So there is very slight difference among them. And some attacks might involve elements of both. So some attacks might both the active attack and passive attacks. The features of active attacks and passive attacks are involved in some attacks. So additionally, not all attacks are technical in nature. So no, hackers, some hackers doesn't know about the technical knowledge. So they're trying to do some attacks based on the collection of data. So that is nothing but social engineering attacks. Social engineering attacks. So here, where an attacker manipulates or devices used in order to gain access to sensitive data. So they are trying to gain the access to the sensitive data by collecting the details of particular victim. That is, there also a common form of attack. It is also one common form of attack. So it might not be like the attacker can have complete knowledge about the technology. By using their general knowledge also, they can make an attacks. For example, if a victim has if he has posted everything on the internet, or if he has given everything on some website, like his date of birth, his marital status, or his names, so where he is going, where he is coming. So like that, if he has given everything on the internet, so there is a chance of attacker collecting the data from the internet of particular victim, and by using the details also they can gain some information about the sensitive data. So gaining some information about sensitive data is nothing but they're trying to attack on some sensitive data or some confidential information of that particular victim. So it is one of the main cause for attacks. So first of all, what is active attacks? What is active attacks is nothing but they're trying to alter system resources. So what are the system resources we are having? Like the data. Some, for example, an organization is there, they're having some customer data or employee data or the vendors data. All these are the system resources. So or affect the operations. So the daily operations that are in the organization, that can also be they're also affected. It is nothing but an active attack. So active attack is nothing but the attack attempts to alter system resources or affect their operations. So the effect will be on the operations also. And next one, active attacks involves some modifications of the data. So some modifications of the data stream or the creation of false statements. So creation of false statements also involves the active attacks. So creation of false statements is nothing but, so if they have changed the message or if they have changed the statements in an envelope cover like that, if they have changed the messages from one person to another person, these are all nothing but active attacks. So here active attacks involves an attacker intentionally alter an attacker's floods a system with traffic. Like they'll try to active attacks involves an attacker intentionally alter or destroy data. So intentionally they're trying to alter. They want to change the data, or they want to modify, or they want to destroy the data, or disrupting the normal operation of a system is also active attack. So normal operations, the transactions, it might be the transactions, or it might be the normal conversations, or it might be the normal meetings, or it might be the production things, anything, the operations in the system. the operations in a system, if they have disturbance between, if they have created some disturbance among them, or they have created any alteration among the data, or they have created destroying the data, they have deleted some data. So these are all nothing but they're trying to plan some attacks based on the active some trying to attack the data. It is nothing but active attacks. So for example, we are having some active attacks include like DOS, denial of service. So at the time of need, the data is not available, or at the time of service, the service is not given by that particular organization or anything. It is nothing but denial of service attack. Denial of service attack. So here, where an attacker floods a system. So he's tried to flood a system with traffic. So sending number of files or number of signals to particular computer or a network in an attempt to make it unavailable. So by sending that, it makes that unavailable to the users or some legitimate users. And malware. So where an attacker installs malicious software on a system to steal or destroy the data. It is nothing but active attacks. Okay, so if there is any malware in the system is nothing but some code of some program. It is some piece of code in a program where the operations of a program can be manipulated by using that malware. So where an attacker, he can install some malicious software. So if the attacker installs a malicious software on the system to steal or destroy the data of the organization. So it is one of the attack in the active attacks. So let us see the types of active attacks. So what are the types of active attacks? So we are having masquerade attacks, modification of messages and repudiation, reply, denial of services. So these are the 5 important active attacks. So first one, masquerade attacks, modification of messages, repudiation, reply and denial of services. Active attacks, these are the active attacks. So first one, masquerade attack. So what is masquerade attacks? So masquerade attack, it takes place when one entity pretends to be another different entity. So he pretends to be one person. Like for example, if X want to communicate with Y, so if he's sending some information to Y, so Y receives the information from X. So in this example, masquerade is nothing but some Z person is trying to send some information that he pretends to be X. Some Z person is pretend to be X and sending the message to Y. So where in Y point of view, it is the message that is came from X, but it actually came from Z. So it is nothing but masquerade attack. So he pretends to be different entity. So here masquerade attack involves one of the other forms of active attacks. So if an authorization procedure isn't always absolutely protected, so authorized procedure means the who have access, so that is always not be protected. So it is able to grow to be extraordinarily liable to a masquerade assault. So it might be affected by the masquerade attack. So here masquerade assaults may be performed using the stolen passwords and logins with the aid of using finding gaps in a program, and or with the aid of using locating a manner across the authentication process. So how they have created the authentication process, based on that also they are trying to stole the sensitive data. So here the sensitive data is nothing but the credential informations, credit card details or the bank details or the transaction details or the data so where the transactions has been done. So these are all the confidential data of an organization or of an user also. So here masquerade assaults, what it might be performed using a stolen passwords and logins. So based on the logins and passwords also they can gain the sensitive data, or with the aid of finding gaps in the program. So if they find any vulnerabilities in the program also, they can change the like there is a chance of being attacked, or with the aid of using locating a manner across the authentication process. So based on based on this authentication process, also they can change the they can attack based on masquerade attacks. So it is masquerade. So for example, so here like we are having for example, like Lily want to send some information to John through internet. So through internet, Lily wants to send some information to John. So here Bob pretends to be Lily. So he is sending the information to John. So Bob is pretending to be Lily and he is sending some information to John. John. So it is nothing but masquerade attack. So it is nothing but masquerade attack. He pretends to be like Bob pretends to be Lily. And next one, modification of messages. So it is one of the very dangerous attack where it attacks on the original data. So it is attack on the original data. It is like the truthfulness of the original data has been attacked by using this attack, modification of messages. So it is nothing but, so it means that some portion of message is altered. So here the whole information has not been altered. So some part of information is changed by the attacker. So it means that some portion of message is altered or that message is delayed or reordered to produce an unauthorized effect. So it might be altered or delayed. So if the delay of the message is also effect on the organization, and it is also the the delaying also will affect the organization, or reorder to produce an unauthorized effect. So they again send some messages for authentication process. So it is one of the attack, modification of messages. So here modification is an attack on integrity of the original data. So integrity is nothing but the truthfulness. So how truthful the original data is. So if there is any modifications of data, modification attack has done on the original data, how truthful the original data is. It is nothing but modification. So it basically means that unauthorized parties not only gain access to data. So it not only gain access to data but also spoof the data. Spoof is nothing but same as the original data, but triggering denial of service attacks. Like such as altering transmitted data. So altering transmitted data packets or flooding the networks with fake data. So they are trying to flood the network with fake data. So it is nothing but manufacturing is an attack on authentication. So here manufacturing is also an attack on authentication. So we are having an example like, so allow John to read confidential information in a file X. So see here, allow John to read confidential information in file X. So if the modification of message attacks has happened, so what it will be? So the attacker might change the name. So allow Smith to read confidential information, confidential file of X. So they have changed the name John to Smith. So the attack might happen in another way also. Allow John to read confidential file of Y. So making the person not to read the file is also the modification of messages attack. So it affects on the organization. So it is nothing but another active attacks. Okay, making the not changing the complete messages. So some part of the messages will be changed. So it is one of the active attacks. And next one. So see here, it is one example like Bob, Lily wants to send some information to John through internet. So where it modifies the messages on send to John. So send to John, modification the message and on so here Bob send the messages to John, like only some part has changed. Only some part of the message has changed on send to John. So like that. So it is like so actually the Lily has to send a message, but Bob has sent the message. It is nothing but modification of messages attack. And next one, reputation. So reputation is also not seemingly, but it is also one of the attack in the active attacks. So this attack occurs when the network is not completely secure. So if the network is not completely secured with the login details or anything, or the login control has been tampered with, so if there is any control, if there is loose control over the login details, so this reputation attack might happen. So here what will happen with this attack? The author's information can be changed by actions of a malicious user. So by using malicious user is nothing but the third person, nothing but the attacker. So the author's information can be changed by actions of a malicious user in order to save false data. So they try to save the false data in log files. So it might be on the log details or anything. So log files up to the general manipulation of data on behalf of others. So they're trying to change the general manipulation of data. So similar to the spoofing of emails messages. So spoofing of emails is nothing but changing the emails that is coming from the reputation sources or legitimacy users, like that, some coming from some others who are trustworthy. So it is nothing but spoof of email messages. So reputation is nothing but they're trying to change the log files, save the false data in log files. So where up to the general manipulation of data on behalf of others. See here. And next one, reply attack. Next one, reply attack. It involves the passive capture of a messages. It involves the passive capture of the messages and its subsequent transmission to produce an authorized effect. So it will try to transmit to produce an authorized effect. So what is an authorized access will have if they have accessed an authorized access. So what is the effect? So like that only they are trying to make a like situation there. So in this attack, the basic aim of the attacker is to save a copy of the data originally present on that particular network. So what is the original data that is present on a particular network? They are trying to change that information, or they are trying to save that particular copy and later on use this data for personal uses. So they will not change anything, they will not do anything, they just save the copy of the original data present on the particular network. And after some days or after some so where the time came, they'll try to use that particular data for making attacks. So once the data is corrupted or leaked, it is insecure and unsafe for the users. So once the data has corrupted, means once the data has been attacked or has been leaked to the users, leaked to the attackers, it is very insecure and safe for users. So who are in the organization. So users are nothing but the customers or the employees, anyone. So if once the data has corrupted, the data in the network or the data in the system, anything, the data has been corrupted or leaked to the attackers, the data is insecure and unsafe for the users. Next one. So see here. So Lily wants to send some information to John through internet. So where Bob captures the messages and resend it to Theo can send multiple times. So here the Bob is captured the message from Lily. So what is the message sending from Lily to John? The message will be there, no? So that message he will copy it. Bob will copy that particular message and he will send it to some other one, or he can do anything. So after some time, it is nothing but reply attacks. Next one, denial of service attack. So denial of service attack, it pretends the normal use of communication facilities. So it is like only normal use. So this attack may have a specific target. It is having some specific target. For example, an entity may suppress all messages directed to a particular destination. So the entity may suppress all messages directed to a particular destination. So another form of service denial is that disruption of an entire network, either by disabling the network or by overloading with messages so as to degrade performance, to decrease the performance, to decrease the operations in an organization or in a system. So they are trying to make use of this denial of service attack. So what it will do, it will try to make other network unavailable at the time of need. So at the time of need, it makes it unavailable for the users. Or what it will do, otherwise it will do, make it disable the network, it will make it overload with messages, so that it will decrease the performance. The system will decrease the performance. The operations in the organization will be slowed down by the denial of service attack. So these are the attacks in active attacks. So these are the types of active attacks: masquerade attack, modification attacks, repudiation attacks, reply attacks, and denial of service attacks. And next one, passive attacks. So passive attacks. So unlike active attacks, so passive attacks are attempt to learn or make use of information from the system but does not affect the system resources. So it will not, like active attacks will attack on the system resources, whereas passive attacks, it will not affect system resources. So they are like nature of eavesdropping on or monitoring transmission. So eavesdropping is nothing but spyware. Someone is spying on the particular things in the organization. So the goal of the opponent is to obtain information that is being transmitted. So the main goal is to obtain the complete information that is being transmitted in an organization. So here the passive attacks involve an attacker passively monitoring. So who is continuously monitoring or collecting data without altering or destroying it. So he will not do anything, he will not alter any data, or he will not make use of that particular data at that time. He just want to monitor how the operations are going on, how the transactions are going on, who are the vendors or who are the users who using that particular system. So he want to collect those details. So examples, we are having the passive attacks like eavesdropping. So someone who is continuously watching our moves. So where an attacker listens it on network traffic to collect sensitive information. So eavesdropping. So he will try to collect sensitive information. And sniffing. So sniffing is nothing but where an attacker captures and analyzes data packets to steal sensitive information. So he'll try to capture the data and analyzes the data packets. The data packets coming from one network to another network, and they try to steal the sensitive information. So these are the examples of passive attacks. One is eavesdropping, and next one, sniffing. Eavesdropping is nothing but the attacker will listen to the network traffic, and whereas sniffing is nothing but attacker captures and analyzes the data packets. So these are all mainly used to collect the sensitive information. So next one, what are the types of passive attacks? So types of passive attacks, in the first one, the release of message content. And next one, traffic analysis. Release of message content and traffic analysis. So first one, release of message content. So release of message content in first, like telephonic conversation. They are trying to hear the information through telephonic conversation. So an electronic mail message or a transferred file may contain sensitive or confidential information. Telephonic conversation, an electronic mail message, or a transferred file. So these may contain sensitive or confidential information. So we would like to pretend an opponent from learning the contents of these transmissions. So it is nothing but the release of message content. So what is the information that is coming through telephones, through electronic mail, through the data transformed, which is having confidential data. So they are trying to gather that information is nothing but release of message content attack in passive attacks. So see here, Lily wants to send some information to John. So Bob reads the content of the message which Lily sends to John. So he'll just read the message. What the Bob read the content. So what the message sent from Lily to John. So here Bob will just read the content. That nothing he will do. He will use that content to collect the information, sensitive information. Next one, traffic analysis. So suppose that we had a way of masking. So masking is nothing but they want to send some information from one place to another place. They want to make the they have to keep key to that particular information. So it is nothing but encryption. So it is like they want to change the data to ciphertext. So which is that only the people who are having the access can read that particular information. So that the attacker, even if captured the messages, they could not extract any information from the messages. So it is nothing but encryption information. So here the opponent could determine the location and identify the communicating host and could observe the frequency and length of messages being exchanged. It is nothing but he cannot read the content, but he can measure measure the length of the messages being exchanged among those users. So what he will do, he'll just measure the location and identity of communicating host who is communicating and could observe the frequency. So what is the frequency and length of messages that are being exchanged among them. And next one, the information might be useful. So that information might be useful in guessing the nature of the communication. So what is the nature of the communication that was taking place? So based on the long messages or short messages, or based on the frequency and length of the particular messages, they can make a guess based on the measurements. So the useful protection against traffic analysis is encryption of SIP traffic. So mainly SIP traffic. To do this, the attacker would have to access the SIP proxy to determine who made the call. So it is SIP proxy. So see here, Bob observes the pattern of messages exchanged between Lily and John. So what is the pattern of messages that were exchanged between Lily and John that can be observed by Bob? So what is the length, or what is the type of messages they are trying to exchange? So like that they can measure. So based on that, Bob can have some guesses to collect the sensitive information. So it is nothing but the traffic analysis. It is another passive attacks. So what are the types of passive attacks? First one, the release of message content. And next one, traffic analysis. Based on the traffic analysis, they are trying to gather the information. And next topic, difference between active attacks and passive attacks. So what is the difference between active attacks and passive attacks? First one, in active attacks, modification in information takes place. So what is it? Modification in information takes place in active attacks. And whereas in passive attacks, what happened? Modification in the information, it does not take place. Does not take place any modification of information, but the attack on the confidentiality. So whereas active attack is a danger to integrity as well as availability. So they mainly affect the integrity. So what is the truthfulness of the sensitive information that will be damaged? And availability. At the time of need, the network or the resources cannot be available. So they are trying to attack on that particular basis. Integrity and availability might damaged in active attacks. Whereas in passive attacks, it is danger to confidentiality. So confidentiality might break in passive attacks. In active attacks, attention is on prevention. So in active attacks, what it is? Attention is on prevention. While as in passive attacks, attention is on detection. So in the prevention itself, we can slow down the active attacks. So while as in passive attacks, it should be not like prevention, it has to be detected. It has to be detected. And due to active attacks, the execution system is always damaged. So if there is any active attacks has happened, the execution system will be damaged. Whereas in passive attacks, there is no harm to the system. So there is no harm to the system. So it can be in active attacks, so the effect is shown. So if there is any attack has happened, the effect will be immediately shown on the operations or anything. So whereas in passive attack, there is no harm to the systems. So it is very dangerous than active attacks. So whereas the attackers has no, there is no there is no detection. There is no detection. It is very late for the users to detect the passive attacks. And in active attacks, the victim gets the information about the attack. Whereas in passive attacks, the information the victim does not get information about the attack. Okay, and next one, the duration of an attack is short, whereas the passive attack is very large. So for detection only, we'll get so much of long time. And in active attacks, the system resources can be changed. In active attacks, the system resources can be changed. So what are the resources we are using in an organization for operational purposes that might be damaged or they can be changed. And while in passive attacks, the system resources are not changed. They will not change any system resources. So here the prevention possibility of active attacks is high. Whereas in prevention possibility of active attacks, passive attacks is very low. Prevention possibility of active attacks is high, whereas in passive attacks it is very low. And in active attacks, the active attack involves influences the service of the systems. So it will mainly influence the service of the systems. Whereas in passive attacks, while in a passive attack, the information and the messages in the system or the networks are acquired. So they'll gather the information in passive attacks. So in active attacks, information collected through passive attacks is used during execution. So what is the information that is collected from passive attacks that will be executed in active attacks? So while passive attacks are performed, so what passive attacks will do? They'll collect the information like passwords, confidential information, sensitive data. So messages among users. So what type of messages they are sending through. So through which medium they are sending. So like that they'll gather the information in passive attacks. And in active attacks, it is tough to restrict from entering systems or networks. So it is very tough for the experts to make restrictions for entering the systems or networks into our networks. So whereas in passive attack is easy to prohibit in comparison to active attacks. So when comparing to active attacks, it is very easy to prohibit. And it can be easily detected, whereas passive attacks are very difficult to detect. And the purpose of the active attacks is to harm the ecosystem. So complete ecosystem is nothing but the operations, the system, so which are connected to one connected to another. So in an organization, if one organization, it will not for its own purpose. So it will work for others and others work for them. Like that, there will be mutual understanding. So they are trying to attack on that particular ecosystem. So whereas the purpose of passive attack is to learn from the about the active ecosystem. So they'll try to gather the information. In active attacks, the original information is modified. So what is the original information that will be modified in active attacks? Whereas in passive attacks, the original information, it will not be any effect. It will just collect the information. So whereas the complexity is very high in active attacks, whereas the complexity is very low in passive attacks. So these are the main differences among active attacks and passive attacks. So first we'll just go through that. So the first one, the contents are active attacks and passive attacks and the differences among them. And the first one, active attacks, they'll just involve some modification of the data stream, whereas they'll try to create some false statements. So these are the types of active attacks. And passive attacks, what they will do, they'll just eavesdropping and they'll sniffing. They'll just try to collect the data, or they'll try to measure the types of messages that are being sent among the users or the vendors. So these are the types of passive attacks, and these are the differences among them. So these are the differences that are collected for active attacks and passive attacks. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.